Hello, hello. Welcome to Revelator Alf. Yes, it's another radio podcast thing here on YouTube and Twitch at exactly the same time. I've got the chat open. If you're going to be watching, if you're going to be here, join in. Let us know you're here. Let us know where you're from. And, well, what you're up to this weekend as well. If you're going to be out riding, if you're going to be at home, maybe you're working, whatever you do. Let us know. Let us know what you're up to. Let us know what you're riding, where you're riding, all that kind of good stuff as well. But the radio podcast thing today, basically I'm going to be talking about a couple of new bikes, I suppose, bit of new news out in the ether there. Not a great deal. It's a Friday, not a great deal. You know, you might ask, well, what the hell am I doing on a Friday night in a studio, doing a live show? But you know, I had a couple of hours to kill, so I thought, well, I've got to be out somewhere later. So I thought, well, do you know what? I'll be out to do that. I'll do this before that. Then I'll go out, come back. Then I've got an early start in the morning. Got to be on the bike, so I'm going to watch the football. So I might do a little kind of journeyman video vlog. Just going to watch the football and come back. And then I got a bit of a weekend of it as well. Tuesday, so on Monday I was supposed to go and ride an Indian, would you believe? But I've had to push that back until the following Tuesday now. So I'm going to be riding an FTR, which I'm really excited about. I think it's a carbon, which I'm going to be riding, so that's going to be really exciting. And if you look on the website right now, there's lots of blog posts, there's lots of stories which I'm putting on there now, really trying to work at the website again and really try and develop that with proper stories or discussion points and things like that. But anyway, so a couple of days ago I released a story directly from Indian Motorcycles themselves, from a press release, in that there's a giveaway of a custom built FTR, and it's basically from part designed by Sebastian Loeb, the World Rally Champion driver, 9 times World Rally Championship driver, and in collaboration with Tank Machine, who've built the thing. And they've only two of these bikes are going to be made. One of them, Sebastian Loeb's going to keep himself, and the other one is going to go to a lucky winner. So there's various countries where you can apply for this. You basically just click on the link. You go to my blog post, you'll see it. There is it. Or you go to the community page on the posts. I put it in there as well on YouTube. But go to my website, revelatoralf.com, and you'll see. Scroll down on a few of the past blog posts, and you'll see the FTR giveaway or raffle type thing. I've had a couple of interesting comments from people out there. I wasn't aware of this, but, you know, almost moaning at me, blaming me for because this offer is not to the North American audience. I'm not sure if it's not in Canada, but it's certainly not available in the United States. I didn't notice that for a start. But it's almost like, hey, it's my fault. It's my fault for, you know, wasting your time. Oh, what? It took you 2 seconds to read that, did it? Wow. Oh, yeah. You know, so people have very warped views, I think. So, John, hello. Good evening. Cyborg, hello. How are you? Thanks for joining. But anyway, so if you're in a participating country, I don't know which ones are participating off the top of my head. But anyway, so you just click on the link, you sign up for it, and then you invite, I think, I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure here, so you have to bear with me. I'm not sure whether you're just actually entered into the competition for the chance to win a custom built FTR, or whether you have to go and test ride one. Anyway, so I'm going to go test ride one. I've always wanted to ride one, never ridden one, always wanted to ride one, so I'm going to take this opportunity anyway. So I'm doing that next Tuesday. So yeah, so there's a bit of to and fro. Anyway, so if you're interested in that, this is not me plugging Indian motorcycles per se. I just think, you know, you don't knock a gift horse in the mouth, do you? Especially when it's you know, custom built, only one of 2 ever built. So I think that would be something to you know, be excited about, really. Let's face it, the chances of you and I winning this thing is absolutely remote. There's not a cat's howling chance. Cat's howl. I can't get my words out tonight. Cat's howl. I haven't even started drinking yet. Look. But hey, there we go. So that's it. I mean, if you go to the website right now, revelatehealth.com, as I say, there's lots of different stories now, and I suppose some of those stories I would normally feature on live shows, and I will sort of talk about those as well, but I'm making them into little blog posts as well. And those, I've been experimenting with different formats. I've written 3 pieces this week, it's yesterday and today. One was published this morning. The other ones are going to be published over the weekend. And it's very interesting that I didn't write them. Put it this way. I've been experimenting with this chat GBT or GPT, this AI, artificial intelligence writing artistic thing. And I just wanted to see what it was like. And, you know, I've actually written my appraisal of this chat GBT on the website as well. So, you know, go read that. I think it's quite interesting, but I don't think, personally, to cut long story short, I don't think it's quite there yet for blogging or writing individual scripts or stories, because you need individuality. You need you to be the creative force. And if you're letting something artistic, some artificial intelligence do it, it's not your voice, it's, you know, somebody else's voice, as it were. But anyway, you know, I think the students are going to love it, put it that way. But anyway, so, you know, that's what's been going on the website. There's it's been developed. There's lots of stuff going on in the background. There's more stuff in, but essentially it's going to be a lot more news and information posts there daily. It depends on the news day. There could be 10 blog posts a day, 20 blog posts a day. It really depends. Or there might just be one, or there may not even be one. It really depends. So it is going to be, you know, I'm trying to develop it into a proper motorcycling news and opinion, more so opinion and information site for people to go and have a read of. Wherever you're from, you know, wherever. You could be in Timbuktu. It doesn't make a difference. And it's nice actually on the where I can see people are viewing the content from. And right now it's like it's yes, okay, predominantly English speaking countries, no doubt, but it is like a fair covering all over the world. So, you know, it always surprises me where people are watching from, like videos, or where people are reading blog posts from, websites from. So so hopefully I can develop that even more and just get it going and just provide better information for you, really, and better insight and better opinion. Because sometimes with the way I work as well, I tell you what, the way it is, sometimes it's not very easy for me to make videos, let's say, or certainly to do live shows where I have to be fixed in a position, whereas writing blog posts, I can do that on the fly. I just need my laptop, really, and obviously what's up here to be able to create something. But so that in that case, in that form, writing blog posts or developing the website is the easiest thing to manage. Not necessarily the easiest thing to write, but the easiest thing to manage anyway. But anyway, let's say wherever you are, let us know where you are. Cyborg, there we go. See, again, I can't even talk tonight. I don't know what's the matter with me. Good luck in getting parts for that. What, the Indian FTR? Yeah, I assume, is there a shortage for that as well, the FTR? Or Indian in particular? I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure. Yeah, I know you're from South Africa, Cyborg. Is there any Indian dealerships in South Africa? I'm really not sure. I'm asking for a friend, as it were. I think Harleys. There's some Harleys down there, aren't there? I think so, something like that. Or multi-brand agencies, dealerships that sell some Harleys. But yeah, I would imagine it's going to be quite difficult. Especially if, you know, obviously being a custom bike, you know, that's going to be quite difficult to get parts for. So you'd have to swap them out for generic parts, unless there's been major modification to the frame. Then obviously okay, there is Indian dealerships, but more Harleys. Yeah, I expected more Harleys anyway, but there we go. Right, so anyway, so Well, I suppose let's just get on with the show, really. Should we just do that? Let's just get on with the show and talk about a few new bikes. Always like that bit at the end. Right, so as always, you can follow me on the social channels, and you can help support the channel by just subscribing, just by watching, just by subscribing, telling all your friends, tell whoever you're watching. You can do a PayPal donation or crowdfunding type thing, or you can do Patreon, whatever tickles your fancy, or you can just don't do anything. It's entirely up to you. No pressure there. So there are all the messages coming up now, yeah, so the website there, revelatoralf.com, if you want to go to all the blog posts there and see what's what, but you don't have to do it now. Go later, go and watch and go and read that later. Okay, let's get into some of the oh, hello, look at that. Never expected that to happen. I've doubled up on myself. Let's get back onto some of the stories, shall we? So this one comes from Visor Down. Only a few stories, as I say, and this is for new bikes. This is brand new bikes. Lots of stories in the motorcycling community, as it were. Biker type stories, motorcycle products. Yeah, there's a few of that. But in terms of new bikes, this is to say from Visor Down. CF Moto, the Chinese motorcycle manufacturer, who obviously also KTM have an involvement with. They're coming out, or they're revealing this 800cc, this 800 NK, which they're going to be coming. Basically, the announcement of the Honda CB750 and Suzuki GSX-8S in 2022 breathed new light into the middleweight sports naked class, and went up against the Yamaha MT-07, Triumph Street Triple, Kawasaki Z650. However, CF Moto now come in with, as part of their relationship with the KTM, KTM have reintroduced the 790 Adventure, 790 Duke, and now the CF Moto are coming out with their 800. So this midweight bike, this multi-platform engine, if you want for a better word, is very, very popular. So it's this 800 NK. It was previously an NKC22 concept motorcycle. Here we find a sort of 100 horsepower, nice, very nice, at 9,000 RPM. Additionally, upside down forks at the front, ABS operating Zhejiang brakes front and rear, obviously just local Chinese, aren't they? And a wet weight 186 kilos. So it's very reminiscent of other bikes, isn't it? It looks virtually exactly the same, any kind of modern day roadster type things. You know, they're very much as John Martin, 790 KTM, outstanding machine, a great all-rounder. I totally agree. They are great. I think this mid-size bike, and you know, the likes of Triumph and KTM are excellent bikes, but obviously now they're coming under increasing pressure from the Chinese motorcycle manufacturers. As I say, I've been talking about this for a long time, but here's the interesting thing. You would imagine there would be some kind of conflict there, right, with the likes of KTM, who are also in league, or that's the wrong word, but not league, but you know, have a collaboration with the Chinese motorcycle manufacturers, but it's also in direct competition with their own motorcycles that they produce. But there we go. So I mean, here's the thing which I remarked on the other day as well. Price and availability for the CF Moto N800 NK is yet unavailable, but as a UK price range in the region of, or in the range of 8,000 would not be a terrible estimate. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a bad shout. I think it might even come in a little bit cheaper, considering some of the other recent announcements from China and also from India as well, of some of their kind of 600 to 700 to 800cc motorcycle variants that might be coming over. That might be a little bit less, maybe about 7,500, something like that. But I think there's a good shout there from Visor Down. 8,000 will be that's it. So not a great deal of detail in there as well, but look, watch out. I think if you're into, I think you've got to like these kinds of bikes, right? I think you've got to, like it. And I think if you're, you like that kind of upriding position, it's got a bit of poke, great for street riding, that kind of thing, especially kind of urban riding. Yeah, you're exposed, just perched on top of it. But I think I think overall, it's a really nice, it looks really nice. Well, put it this way, when I say it looks really nice, it doesn't look out of place if you line it up against sort of KTMs or any Japanese bikes as well. It kind of fits, fits the bill, as it were. So there we go. That's the CF Moto 800 NK. And obviously more details are going to be revealed on this in the coming months as well. So that's that one. Right, so the next story. Now, the only reason I brought this up was because I've actually been to this dealership here in Orlando, Harley Davidson. And it's a massive dealership, right? And basically, I don't know. It's very difficult to say with some buildings. But the front of it looks really cool, right? And it's got the old water tower on top of it. And it's kind of like one section of it is really old worldy. The other section is a little bit newer. And behind it, you don't know if it's still a really old building or whether it's just the facade. And I seem to recall from when I was there, I did a bit of background research. I think it is just the facade, which is old or made to look old, but the rest of the building behind is brand new. Well, not brand new, but new-ish, as it were. Or put it this way, a lot newer than the front. Anyway, I'm rambling. But suffice to say, the owner of the dealership has sold the property, the land, to some property developer, and a lot of people's in the area will kind of go, oh, what's going on here? Well, it's essentially what they've done. They sold the land, but they've leased it back. So the new owners have leased back the land and the property to the dealership, so it's not closing or anything like that. And it's one of these massive things. So if you ever go to Disneyland or Disney World or whatever it is over there, or Universal for a family holiday, it's literally just there. You can just go to it. It's literally 5 minutes down the road, and it's you can go there, and it's, if you're into bikes, full stop, I think it's an interesting place to go. But obviously, if you're a Harley Davidson fan, it's really good. But anyway, so they're going to take that money to be able to reinvest in the building. So it might be that there's even more developing here and becomes an even bigger dealership. I'm not sure whether that's such a good thing, but there we go. There we go. So that was the other story. I just thought it was interesting because as soon as I saw it, I thought, I know that. I've been there. Okay, the next story here. This is the only reason I brought this up was this. There's a story a while ago about this Honda in Japan. They're going to release this Honda Hawk 11, and then they thought it was only going to be for the Japanese market, and now it transpires that there might actually be filings for this to be sold in India and possibly elsewhere. The only reason why I make a note of this, because this front nacelle fairing here is actually so close, so similar to the Triumph Speed Triple. Is it RS? Is it one of those two, the S or the RS? It's so similar. It looked from the front of this, it looked very similar to that Speed Triple. So I mean, obviously it's a different bike, but it just kind of looks the same here. This bit here looks very similar, and that's the problem with a lot of cars, of course. But there's a lot of problems with motorcycles as well, especially of modern designs. It's like sometimes they kind of look a little bit similar. Do you know what I mean? There aren't that many brand new ideas anymore. So they, especially when one manufacturer comes out with a new idea, you often find that other manufacturers tend to do similar kind of things for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years anyway, until they start, doing their own thing or catching up with their own design teams. But it's basically using the Africa Twin engine in various different platforms as well. And it's it's basically saying this is going to India, perhaps. They're not 100% sure. So lots of people were getting quite excited about this, and I say it kind of looks, kind of cafe racer, modern take on a cafe racer type thing. For me, it looks very similar to the Triumph, but so it's a twin, obviously the Africa Twin engine. that's, I mean, it looks really nice there. I say like that. But whether we'll see it in other parts of the world, whether we'll see it in Europe or, you know, wherever, United States, South America, Africa, you know, who knows? Don't know. But I just thought it was an interesting one. And I think this is true, as I say, for many motorcycle manufacturers. If you start looking, not the bike per se, but just at the design, or individual design aspects or features, not that I'm any kind of designer or anything like that, but I'm saying I notice it, that, you know, I tend to notice it more than I tend to notice the bikes these days, would you believe? But I tend to look at it and I say, okay, that's like another bike. It's very similar to like when you get a bit older and you're into music, and then you hear a bit, a brand new band that your children are into, right? And they're listening to it, and you think, oh yeah, that sounds exactly like something 20 years ago. And then you find out that they sampled it, and now they've tweaked it a little bit, but it's virtually exactly the same. Or sometimes it is exactly the same, you know. So it's this is what I feel, you know. It looks a little bit like that, but there we go. But I like it. I like the look of it. This is my point. I actually like the stance of this. I like the look of it. I like that Nissan fairing. I don't think the radiator is completely grotesque. Yeah, it does look very plastic. I do like this deep blue. I've always been a sucker for a deep blue bike as well. If it's not black, a nice deep blue, I do like it. You know, in all fairness, for my taste, it's a little bit too light. If it was a little bit darker, that blue, or great. The only complaint I would have about this bike is that this blue doesn't necessarily go with the color of the frame, the color of the seat, and that kind of silver and blue for me doesn't quite work. You know, I think if they'd made some of the plastics, like around the seat cowl here, I think if they made that like a darker black type thing, or maybe made the frame black or something, maybe that would have popped out a little bit more. But I think the silver tends to, I mean, listen to me, I'm being quite critical here, you know, but I shouldn't be really, but you know what I mean. I'm just not keen. I'm like the blue, I just don't like the rest of the color. But say as an overall bike, it reminds me of Triumph Speed Triple. So anyway, let's see if we ever hear of this bike in the Western world or anywhere else. Soderbag, hello. Flat Cap Racer, hello. The Hawk looks good from the seat forward. Looks like they forgot to paint the rear of it. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It does. Yeah, seat going forward, it looks all right, but going at the back, yeah, I agree. Because the Africa Twin, that engine, in essence, is a great engine. It's probably one of the best engines around at the moment. Not at the moment, for the last few years, right? So I think I really like, you know, the Africa Twin. I've ridden a few of those now. It's just a lovely feeling bike, a lovely feeling engine. So I just wonder, that engine in this bike, obviously tuned differently, but I just wonder how much of a rocket this thing. It's not going to be a rocket, but it'd be like a manageable rocket. And I think this will appeal to a man of a certain age, if you know what I mean, or a woman of a certain age. You know, not necessarily inline force, you know, completely ballistic speed, but they still want a bit of, you know, performance from the twist of the throttle. So I think that would be a decent shout, actually, as a bike of the future. But there we go. Right, next one here, another Chinese bike here. Look at this. I don't know if you remember, a few weeks ago I was talking about, or I made a video about Chinese clones of like Harley Davidsons, and I think I discussed it in a live show a bit before that as well. One of the bikes that I featured in that video, I believe, I can't remember exactly which bikes I featured, but one of the bikes I featured, or maybe took a quick snapshot of it, was this Wolverine X800. And I basically said it's not only production bikes that Chinese motorcycle manufacturers have tended to clone or copy, and as near as copy it, you know, absolutely everything. But they've also taken their cues from what look like custom bike builds. And I saw one and I thought, okay, this is very similar to like Exile motorcycles, you know, that kind of thing. So this is it. This is the Wolverine. The Wolverine. It's an XS800. Comes from China. Features an 800 cc 4-valve V-twin and a ginormous 360 section rear tyre. It just reminds me of one of those Exile Cycles bikes. There's a little bit of Ducati Diaval in there as well. There's as always, there's a little bit of everything. But look at this. Look at this. The rest of the bike. But then look at what they've done with this front fender. It just looks completely out of place. That rear tire. I mean, it just looks. I mean, you know. Again, not too sure about this emblem here on the tank, but there we go. So. Yeah, so even they're saying, no, this isn't some limited run custom bike out of SoCal, Southern California, custom shop. This is the Wolverine X800 liquid cooled cruiser all the way from China. It's the latest bike from Guangdong Jianya Motorcycle Technology Company. And unlike some of the brand's offerings, it's actually quite cool looking. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's got quite some nice, oh, hello, some nice decent lines there. See if I can get rid of that. I don't know what. Oh, there we go. No. I mean, look at the size of this rear tyre. Jeez, I mean, it goes from there, the left, from the indicator, pretty much from the inside of the indicator to the other side of the indicator. I mean, just look at it. It's right here. You can't see my cursor, unfortunately, I don't think. But anyway, it is huge. My crikey. But there we go. Oh, hello. What have I done? Oh, don't want to do that. Right. It might only put out a claim. So, I mean, here's where it starts falling down. You know, you've got a big bike that looks big, that looks the part, but in the flesh and it doesn't quite work. This is where you kind of mismatch. And this is where I think the Chinese are they're not quite on point with what a bike looks like and how it should perform, because it's basically saying it might only put out a claimed 49 brake horsepower at 7,000 RPM and 43 foot-pounds of torque, which is, you know, but those numbers are contained by one of the biggest rear tyres we've ever seen on a production bike, 360 millimeters in section. To put that sizable girth into perspective, a Triumph Rocket 3, widely regarded as having the widest tyre, production tyre this is, fitted to a full production bike, wears a 240 section rear tyre. Good luck trying to find a 360 mil rear tyre for this thing. Put it that way. While slotting a 360 section on a bike with less than 50 horsepower might sound like overkill, well, it probably is, although you can't deny the rest of the specs of the Wolverine are fairly tepid. 288 kilos are ready to ride, sub 100 miles an hour, won't even do 100 miles an hour. Single front disc, oh dear, brake highland. This is yeah, okay. Is it a single disc front brake, highlighting that this is a bike that puts the show above the go? Well, it's not only this bike, though, because, you know, many Harley Davidsons or many other bikes only have a single front disc as well, so you know it's not. I mean, I saw a limited run of this new Czech bike, this Praga. They're running front and rear drum brakes, you know. So okay, yeah, modern versions of drum brakes, but there we go. Yeah, okay, look, so even they're saying, look, obviously we're on the same wavelength, myself and Visor down here, because they're saying, yeah, the Ducati Diaval and the Rocket 3 would have surely been quaking in their boots. Yeah. I don't think so. I don't think they're going to be quaking in their boots over this. But it just goes to show that there's, you know, the Chinese have obviously identified that there's somewhere there is a market for this kind of bike. I'm not sure whether that market is certainly for the United States. I don't think it's for Europe as well. I'd be very surprised if many of these sell at all over here. However, I do see this being sold in markets where people can't afford the likes of Indian and Harley Davidson, for example. So, do you know what I mean? So I think there's definitely a market for it. I'm not sure whether the market is where I live, you know, in the UK, but I could be proven wrong. You know, it almost reminds me of those, you know, those kind of, those kids bikes that you could buy, and they were like little Harley Davidson custom cruiser type things, you know, back in the day. And I think, you know, the people like Orange County Choppers at one stage were making bikes for kids that either were toy bikes or they were fully functioning choppers, you know, but they were just for kids. They had them in a small CC engine and that kind of thing. So how can they afford the likes of that rear tire? But yeah, well, you know, I just think it's a bit of a nonsense ride, this one. I just don't see it being any, you know, what are you going to do with this? And you know, it's just, if you want some, you know, it's like having a super muscle car, isn't it? An SMC or a super muscle bike. If you're going to have this stance, if you're going to have this look, if you're going to have that kind of old school, just muscle raw power, forget about handling, forget about brakes, forget about suspension. We're just talking, you know, muscle car, muscle bike in the old school way. And then obviously super muscle variant. So actually you update the brakes, you update the suspension, the handling. So it actually goes around a corner pretty well. Well, then this fails on every single level, doesn't it? Because it, you know, it hasn't got the power. It's dubious on the looks, and it's just mismatched for our market. But for the Chinese market, for the Indian market, for anywhere around the, you know, like the Middle East, even possibly even in Africa as well, this might, you know, this might tick a lot of boxes. I mean, how much are they saying that this is going to go for? That it doesn't say. Oh, no pricing has been announced yet. Yeah. So it's basically coming. They're saying it's coming, but you know, I don't want to be the doom merchant here, but I just can't see anybody buying it, or not many people buying it. I could be wrong. I'm usually wrong about these things, but I just think it'd be. I think if you turned up anywhere like this, whilst I know that the modern way of biking is not to laugh at anybody else's bike, and I know all that, I think if you turn up on one of these, people are going to kind of look at you and just to say, you know, why? Do you know what I mean? You're just going to, I don't know. Maybe I'm being rude. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh. I don't know. But it just looked, you know, but I think the first thing you want to do is just, you know, get rid of that tank emblem for a start, because that looks naff. And also get rid of that front mudguard, that front fender. That looks naff, completely out of place. Maybe change the pullback of those handlebars as well, because that's out of place as well. A little bit. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to. If the longer I look at it, the more I start picking holes in it, and I really shouldn't do that. I should just value it for what it is. You're on two wheels. Who cares? And I honestly do feel that. I do feel that. I don't care what you ride, but I just kind of think you're shortchanging yourself with something like this, because I think you should be expecting a super muscle bike, and all you're getting is a feeble, heavy, big fat rear tire bike with no oomph, you know. Yeah, and it would probably sound like a hairdryer. Do you know what I mean? So there we go. Right, next story. Here, I say I've got more on this on the website as well, one of the blog posts. But BMW have recalled a few of their bikes, the S1000R, the S1000XR, and basically what it was, there was a couple of crashes. BMW investigated. While they're investigating, there was another couple of crashes as well. A couple were there was one from France, one from Turkey, one from Belgium. One had injuries. I don't think the other two had. Cut long story short, what it was that the riders lost control of the bike, but they don't know why they lost control. They don't, and the riders said, we don't know what, the bike was just lost control. We don't know what happened. They looked into it and they found actually these bikes have got like an anti-wheelie system on there, but they also had a software update. And what happened was that the software update deactivated this anti-wheelie or this anti-stabilization thing. So what happened was that these riders were riding them, and then all of a sudden the anti-wheelie wasn't kicking in and made the front end really loose. They lost sort of traction on the front tire, then all of a sudden dropped them and crashed or whatever. So what this basically means is that this is from the United States. BMW Motorrad USA have basically recalled, I think it's about 700 bikes here. I can't remember what I wrote this earlier on as well. I can't remember what. Yeah, over 754 bikes. 484 are of the 1000XR and 270 of the 1000R, and these were manufactured between let's have a look. Yeah, so the R between 26th of February 2021 to November 18th 2022, and the XR from March 2nd 2020 to November 25th 2022. And owners of these motorcycles will be notified no later than March 28th. Apparently the US dealerships are already aware of it, so you can contact your dealership now. If you've not heard about this, contact your dealership and then you can get this software updated on your bike. It does appear that BMW do seem to be having quite a few issues with their software or engine control units recently. There's another recall about something similar recently. So, interested in that, they had a software update and it glitched out, another part of the software, as it were, but nobody was aware of it, and owners weren't aware of it. So it just goes to show that you've always got to be careful what you're doing. So wherever you are, get in touch with your local dealership. Now, again, I checked for UK and Europe whether there's a recall for these bikes, and there isn't right now. There might be next week or the week after, but right now there isn't. So again, I would go to your dealership and I would say, if you've got these bikes, wherever you are in Europe, Australia, South Africa, wherever you are, it doesn't make any difference. If you got BMW, you got it from BMW dealership, go have a word with them and see what's what. Bleak Rides, hello. I wish these bikes were more widespread. Enfield is a budget-friendly manufacturer, and as more companies move to premium brands, will hurt them a lot. Yeah. Enfield, I think, are great bikes, but a lot of the Indian bikes, also you got to say the Chinese bikes, they're just getting better and better. And also, what the key thing here to remember is, it's not only Chinese or Indian bikes. We have big Western manufacturers who are having collaborations now for the last couple of years with Indian and Chinese motorcycle manufacturers, right? And that's going to be more and more prevalent. And obviously Harley Davidson, with the QJ motor as well, although they haven't officially released their bikes, but that's a story I'm going to get onto in a minute. So it's more and more. So it's no wonder that their products are getting better and better, but they're still really cheap. And this, I always say that this is a concern for the brands of Western motorcycles who are selling the expensive motorcycles. If they don't sell cheaper versions for the Western market, they're going to be in serious trouble, I believe. Now, I could be wrong again, but it's just my opinion. But I think and this is where the issue is. Okay, so anyway, so this is the BMW recall. Go check it out, or go to your dealership and tell them I sent you. They'll probably hate me for it, but they shouldn't really, because it's all part of what they do. I mean, there's no cloud over BMW in terms of the way they've investigated it or anything like that. They've done absolutely right. There's no criticism here of them, only that obviously they've caused their own problem, as it were. So I don't know what the initial software update was for, but obviously it has caused this glitch and nobody was aware of it. So you would imagine that any kind of software update or any kind of change, any update on a bike, would be fully tested to see if it interferes with anything else. You get the test riders involved and say, but obviously in this case it wasn't, or it was overlooked. So I suppose from that point you got to ask questions, haven't you? You got to ask questions. Well, what happened? What happened in the testing phase? Surely if there's an update, it should be thoroughly tested, but it wasn't. Questions should be asked. Okay. What's the? Let me just get on to the next story. Right. Before I get into the main two stories, because there are two main stories, I thought you'd like that. This is a story from the UK. I believe this is for the UK only. I could be wrong. So a few months ago, or about 3-4 months ago, I believe, they had in the UK, they had an extended warranty for the Revolution Max engine bikes. I believe it was all the Revolution Max engines. I can't actually remember what it said. You have to go back to one of my live shows. But essentially what they've done now here in the UK, they've created a 4-year extended warranty, which is exactly the same, but only for the Pan America, 1250 and the Pan America 1250S. And you've got to, you can only have this or take this option until the 31st of March. And this is the UK. So Harley Davidson has announced a new extended warranty offer available until the end of March. The new extended warranty is exclusively for the Pan America and is available on new purchases of these motorcycles only, which kind of stands to reason, right? The extended warranty provides an additional 2 years of cover on top of the standard HDU warranty, meaning a total of 4 year. So basically, you get 4-year warranty on a brand new bike. Hey, the question is, why aren't all motorcycles would come with a 4-year warranty? Why not? For me, I would say, why not? Why not have it 4 year? If you're able to offer this bike with a 4-year warranty, this is not just for Harley Davidson, by the way. This is not just for Harley Davidson. This is for all motorcycle manufacturers. If a manufacturer can offer one of their models a 4-year warranty, why aren't there other greater warranty periods for all manufacturing types? You know, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. You know, you've got cars that are given 7-8 year warranty periods, right? Why not have it on motorcycles? There you go. I mean, you know, I could be wrong. I mean, it's an interesting thing for Harley Davidson to do this, I think, because you've got to factor in that the Pan America, the Revolution Max engine, it's had a few teething issues. I wouldn't say more than that for the first 12 months, 18 months, let's say. And it's just good to see that actually, well, obviously they feel that confident that they've sorted these out. And they are good bikes, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with them from a riding point of view. But you say, well, if you're going to offer a 4-year warranty and you're in the market for one, I think this is the one that those things that will tip it over the edge. You say, do you know what? I'm going to go for it. If you give me 4 years, you know, warranty. Obviously, you know, the devil's in the detail. Now, you wonder what limitations are with the Harley Davidson warranty and all that sort of stuff. And you know, you might have to just knuckle down exactly what this extended warranty is and what it features. Whether it's a 2-year standard warranty, then the extended warranty is dramatically cut back on what is covered, which I suppose is kind of standard stuff. But even so, you know, you may pay for a 2-year extended warranty, but this is, you're getting it for free. So it might be worth you buying it just for that very reason. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so this bike, I mean, the Pan America, they've obviously got a Harley Davidson Adventure Centre here in the UK as well. And it's run by a guy called Mick Extance, who's obviously a famous Dakar rally rider. Just go. Yeah, that's about it, really. Nothing more there. So anything else? Right, so that's that one. Right. So this is where I suppose we get into the nuts and bolts of the big debate, right? The big debate. Let's get into it. Okay, so the big debate really, from my point of view, who's going to challenge who for 2023 and in 2024? Now, there's been various articles I've read over the last sort of couple of months where they're really bigging up the likes of Royal Enfield, right? As there are other companies, but they're the Royal Enfield, because they've captured the imagination of many people, not only in India, because Royal Enfield are not the largest motorcycle manufacturer in India, but they are synonymous with Indian riding culture. But what Royal Enfield have done so successfully is that they've branched out into Western markets in particular, and they've become very successful, become very popular. So much so that Royal Enfield now are one of the best-selling motorcycles in the UK, and also in certain countries around Europe. And if they're not the best-selling, they're very close to being best-selling. So, and this is as a general brand, not necessarily as in one particular class, right? So the question is, can they challenge the likes of Harley Davidson? And I've talked about this before, and I think, well, I think they're more of a challenge for Triumph. But the reason why there's a bit of an issue here, there's a bit of a potential butting of heads, as it were, is this: that Royal Enfield have they've got more motorcycles coming this year and into next year. It's programmed that they're releasing bigger engines, more powerful engines in different styles, and they'll be releasing more liquid cooled engine variants as well. They've already released the Super Meteor 650cc cruiser bike, which many are believing could challenge the likes of Harley Davidson in the cruiser lineup, but not necessarily from Harley Davidson fans who like the cruisers, but it's more from people who would like Harley Davidsons but maybe don't have that enough money to buy that, or they just want to go somewhere else and they just want to have a cruiser style bike. Perhaps this Super Meteor will be a challenge to the Revolution Max engine bikes. Totally different style. They look different. They look dated or whatever, but that's what they're saying. They're saying that basically the gap is narrowing between the two, all the styles of motorcycles, because Royal Enfield are a retro motorcycle production company, and you could say Harley Davidson are to a certain degree as well. And as their worlds get closer and closer, it's almost like there's a really big company just producing small bikes, what they're known for, small bikes, and there's a really big company just producing big bikes. But at some point, they're going to meet, and within their own territories, they are kings, or they act like kings. But it's the borderlands, it's the countries in between, and that's where potentially there's going to be the biggest challenge to each other. Harley Davidson won't be challenging Royal Enfield so much, but Royal Enfield will be challenging Harley Davidson to gather ground, to take ground from Harley Davidson. Now, whether it's taking ground away from the Pan America, maybe people want a smaller ADV bike, whether it's taken away from the Revolution Max engines or from the cruisers, people are moving away, they want to go to a cheaper bike, but they still like the style, that kind of thing. You see where I'm going with this? So this is where, it says, well, okay, could East meet West? Could there be some kind of road war, as it were? Could there be some kind of fight on our hands? And I don't think it's that dramatic, but I think there is something in it. There is something in it. And here's an illustration of that. Let me just get to the websites here. So this is here we go. Basically, this is from Drive Express Drives from India as well. And basically, the Royal Enfield, and again, it's all on the website as well, on my website as well. I've done lots of different stories and exposés on this. But Royal Enfield, they are set to release a 450c Himalayan. So the Himalayan, smaller ADV bike, really popular all over the world. Not very powerful, but, it does exactly what it says on the tin. Very capable, go anywhere, does anything. Brilliant bike, right? But they're going to release a 450 bike, but it's liquid cooled engine. So they've released some pictures here, and look, it's I think it's got no, what is it? It's it's a little bit sleeker. It's got a taller visor, grab rails, LED headlamp and tail lamp, upside down forks, a monoshock rear suspension, 21-inch front, 17-inch rear, spoke wheels, and digital instrument cluster as well. And it just goes on and on. But basically, liquid cooled engine, single cylinder, 450cc. This is just the smaller version of engines to come. This is what they're saying. This is what the word on the street, as it were, or the word in the ether, is that there's more to come from Royal Enfield. They're getting technologically better. The quality is getting a lot better, and they're producing bikes that people are going to want to buy. However, can Harley Davidson fight back? So here's the next point of this. The next point of this was the other story that, as we know, that Harley Davidson have been in collaboration with QJ Motor from China to produce this X350 and this X500 cc motorcycle. But what's happening now is that Harley Davidson have basically snubbed. I use the word snub in my post and also in my title. They snubbed the idea that this bike, or the 500cc, maybe, but certainly the X350 is they've dismissed the idea that it's going to go for the American market. However, they are, and it's been confirmed now, that they are going to introduce this X350 into the Harley Davidson riding schools all over the United States, and it's set to replace the the Street 500. Now, basically, what this is this. It's not the standard X350cc. This is like a detuned version. It's pretty much going to have crash bars on and grab rails on and that kind of stuff, similar to the 500s, if you saw the picture there. But actually, what it's got here, it's instead of the 353 parallel twin engine producing 36 horsepower, this RA version is only going to produce 23 horsepower, and it's going to run it on smaller tires, front and rear tires. Front is a 110, rear is a 150. On a standard 350 X350, it's a 120 front with a 160 rear section. And it just goes on for a few things. But basically what it's saying is that Harley Davidson here, they've basically said, no, it's not for the American market, and we kind of knew that anyway. We always thought it was, but we're going to bring the bikes out for the school. So here's the question: will people riding these bikes kind of go into the dealerships and say, actually, I want one of those bikes, I want one of those? Will there be a market? Will there be a demand for people from the United States, especially in the built-up areas, and especially from the young riders or new riders? Will they like the look of this bike and say, look, that's a small Harley, I think I like a bit of that, I want a bit of that? And maybe if they start putting more and more pressure, that might open up a market. But obviously Harley Davidson, the CEO, Jochen Zeitz, they're saying, no, we don't want anything to do with this. This is purely for the Asian market, possibly China. But then in India, they're already forecasting that this bike is going to come to the Indian market. So then there's another aspect to here where Harley Davidson then could be challenging Royal Enfield. As we know, or as I've reported, Harley Davidson have also gone into collaboration with another Indian motorcycle manufacturer, Hero Motorsport, Motorcorp, I should say, and they are the biggest unit sales motorcycle manufacturer in India. So now if they bring out motorcycles with them, they've also got the Chinese Harley. They are going to be at a direct challenge to the likes of Royal Enfield with the 350cc, 400cc's, 500cc's. They're going to have the quote is going to have a little bit more power than the existing models. They're going to have a sort of modern twist on it that the Indian bikes don't have right now. Some of these bikes that we're seeing, certainly the 500, is a little similar to, it's quite generic with some of the other Chinese brands out there, or even the European design houses that are essentially Chinese bikes as well. So it's whether Harley Davidson can position themselves with these small bikes to be competitive in those marketplaces. So from one hand, Royal Enfield are taking a small step, a feeble attempt, let's say, to gather and gain some ground on the likes of Harley Davidson, which I don't think they necessarily will. I think it's more Triumph. That Triumph have got to be watching over their backs, watching over their shoulders. But let's just say, I can see it. I can see where people are thinking that this is going to be a challenge here, not necessarily for challenging like-for-like bikes, but challenging, convincing people not to buy a Harley Davidson and buy a Royal Enfield instead. So they're going to be challenging on the in the American markets or European markets, let's say, where Harley Davidsons are sold in numbers. But now Harley Davidson are fighting back. They're looking at Royal Enfield to say, hey, no, we're going to, fight you on your own turf, and we've got bikes here that can beat your market as well. It really depends how much these are sold for. How much these are sold for, and if people really want to buy it. I personally think that these will be huge sellers if they get the pricing right, because you can't deny that people in other parts of the world, they will look at Harley Davidson and think, yes, I want a Harley Davidson, and they will look at that and say yes. So I think in certain markets, these are sell like hotcakes. If they are at the same price, if they're any more expensive, then that will turn people off quite straight away. And this is why the Street 500 and the 750 didn't sell. It didn't sell anywhere in the near numbers that it should have done. Certainly in the likes of South America or in places like India or around Europe. It just because it was too expensive for what it was. Robbie, hello. Who would have thought that Harley would be taken down by Royal Enfield? Well, I'm certainly not suggesting that. But nobody would have thought the Royal Enfield would have made the grounds that they've done in the last few years. So, ignore them at your peril. But all I'm saying here is that, there are things to consider here, and there are things to consider for Harley Davidson. And this is why I find it incredible that Jochen Zeitz has kind of dismissed, kind of snubbed the whole idea, snafu'd the whole idea of saying, well, we're not going to sell these in the United States. Now, he hasn't actually said anything about the 500 version or any future bike. It could be that this first bike, this X350, is a kind of a tester for the market as a whole, for all markets. So he's kind of thinking, do you know what? Let's just wait until we get the 500. The 350 we'll just have in the schools, the riding academies around the US. The 500, that's the bike we'll release for, the market in the United States, for urban riders, that kind of thing, new riders, as the entry level bike. Yeah, I can see that. Maybe when the bikes from, Harley Davidson Hero come out for the Indian market, maybe they won't come at all to the Western market. Maybe they'll just go to like a European market or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if the Harley Davidson from Hero as well looks very similar to this as well. I would not be surprised if it's exactly the same. There's some kind of licensing deal. There's cross, three-party licensing deal or something like that. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if there's, because they're doing it now. More and more companies are collaborating. More and more companies are producing these small bikes. And this is, what led off with this is just say, we talk, or I talk about the Indian motorcycle manufacturers and say, watch out, you can't ignore the units numbers that they're selling and also the bikes that they're building. People always ignore them, especially from the West, because they're always producing cheap bikes, cheaply made, disposable bikes in many ways, right? Which they weren't, but that's what was the perception, and especially of the Chinese bikes. But now they're not. Now they're much better. They're producing bigger bikes, and they're selling in numbers, so the companies are just getting a lot more powerful now. The Royal Enfield, TVS, Hero, for example, Bajaj, they are not small companies. They are massive companies, huge. They just don't happen to sell 1,000cc, 2,000cc, 2,500cc, Rocket 3s or whatever. They don't sell, 117 cubic inch engine bikes or anything. They sell smaller engine bikes. But what I'm saying is that those CCs are getting bigger and bigger, Dutch, Harley already tried the Buell Blast and the Street 500 750. They have, yeah. The Buell, yeah. Small bikes by them is not going to work out in the USA. They are a Lux brand. Well, yeah. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I suppose that's the counter argument to any bike like this. Maybe this is why the CEO said, well, we're not going to sell these in the United States because nobody's going to buy them. Nobody's going to buy them. And maybe that's the most sensible thing to do. I don't know. But the thing about the Street 500, the 750, they were overpriced and they didn't look too good. The styling was, you know, mediocre a bit. But in terms of competition, they were sort of underpowered, overpriced, really. The Buell Blast and the Buells, well, there's a lot of time for those, and they could have been developed a lot better if they hadn't sold them down the river, or if they hadn't scrapped the whole Buell thing. Plus the Aramaki Italian bikes back in the day. Well, there's still a lot of love for those bikes as well. There's a huge following for those, and let's not forget, those bikes introduced whole generations into the Harley Davidson world. So they can't have been that bad. They can't have been that bad. And this is my point. You can't compare what happened years ago with those poorly made Aramaki Harley Davidsons to these bikes that are going to be made now, which are going to be much better engineered. So it's like a mindset thing. So you've got to change your thinking as well. Kevin, hello, evening, hello. Where are we? Chinese Indian bikes, like you say, more of a threat to Triumph. I would say so. I think what's currently on offer, I would definitely say they're more a threat to the Bonneville type motorcycles. Yeah, the Bonneville range, that kind of thing. That's where I see it in my head. But Pricehead and Hart as well, as how big small your wallet is, a big bike buying factors. Yeah, exactly. Look, this is not to say that just because somebody offers you a cheaper bike or a smaller bike that you're going to say, oh, I'm going to ditch everything that I love just because to go and buy a smaller bike. I'm not saying that at all. Look, if somebody bought me one of these 350s, let's say, and they said to me, "I'll just get rid of your Harley now, and this is, you know, you can buy this one," I'd say, "No, on your bike." Now, if it was an addition, I could stick it on the back of my Breaking Bad camper, and I'd be, "Oh, there you go." I'd definitely, look into it like that. But, so it's nothing that I would say I'm going to swap what I've got for this. However, if I'm in the market for a cheap runaround, and this is what I want as an addition, let's say I want a little winter bike. Let's say I just want a bike to ride around here, go to the, go nip into town. Maybe my circumstances change where, I have to sell my big bike, and I want something I want to stay on two wheels. I want something small and affordable. Maybe I'm buying something for my son, that kind of thing, that I just want him to develop his skills on a little bit, that kind of thing. This is where the market is, you see. Here we go. I think times have changed, and Harley can sell a smaller bike that's built well and looks good to younger people. Well, yeah, I think so. The thing is, what's there to lose? What's there to lose? If you're already building these bikes, the thing, it would be a different argument if you're saying we have to build, but we're thinking about building these small bikes purely for the American market. Okay, that is totally a different argument, and that is totally a different way of thinking to say you're onto a loser there. If you're building these bikes just for the American market, you won't sell them in numbers enough to cover all the R&D, at least, and to cover the production cost, especially if you're building them in the United States, right? Because you won't be able to sell them for cheap enough to beat the competition. However, in my opinion, Harley Davidson have done exactly the right thing. You think of me, I know people think of me as I criticize Harley Davidson, but I call it as I see it. And in this regard, I think they've done it absolutely right. They've taken it out of the United States, they've taken it out of Europe, and they've gone to China, and then obviously they'll take it into India as well, to have a lower unit cost price of production. So therefore, you're going to sell this bike a lot cheaper. So the fact is that they're already producing it, then all it is a case of importing it into the US. Well, they've already imported it because, well, they filed it as in terms of as a model, but they will be importing it just for their riding academies. So the link is already there. The pathway is already there. They just need to see whether there's a market. So my question is, will the people who experience riding these bikes or get a first view from the riding academies, will the news spread like wildfire and say, people say, we want this bike. We actually want a smaller bike, Kevin, two local sell anything dealers to me have stopped selling Chinese scooters and small bikes. Too many warranty claims and cheap materials issues. There's no doubt. There's no doubt that that is ongoing. And, you know, you've got... crikey, I mean, if you think of some of those bikes that were produced, it's pretty awful. It's pretty awful. Some of the standards. I mean, the thing is, you buy a bike and, you know, you wouldn't be able to get parts for it, or it just, you know, now the parts are plentiful, but, you know, it's just, they're not quality. But all I'm saying is that it's getting better. If you compare to where they were and where they are now, even though they got the problems, they're still much better than where they were. Then you get in the bikes that are coming, you know, in years to come. So that's where I talked about that previous bike, that Wolverine, which I think that's just a bit of a poor buy. You know, you're gonna be worried about the parts for it. You're gonna be the parts availability, how much those are gonna cost, how plentiful are they, how many people are riding these bikes, and you might even look a bit of a knob, although you've paid, you know, cheap money for it. However, with cheap bikes, small displacement bikes, well, you know what you're getting. You're not spending a lot, but you're getting a cheap runaround. And yes, it might not be that reliable. It might not run for 100,000 miles, but you're not buying that bike for 100,000 miles. You're buying that bike for a few thousand miles, and possibly until you've outgrown it and you're getting something else. But I take your point. Yeah, you know, this is, but you know, those dealers are not the... Dealerships stop selling bikes for various different reasons. Dealerships close left, right and centre. You know, as no doubt some dealers will close or stop selling those bikes. Other dealers will start up selling those bikes as well. You know, a lot of these Chinese bikes and scooters, we know now, are sold online as well. They've got online you know, people selling them as well, so it's good. Dutch, HG needs to do a better job at modernising the big twin than they did with the Sportster replacement. That's why what they should concentrate on. Well, yeah, the question is do you want them to modernise, or does the bulk of people, excuse me, want them to modernise? I think with the M8 engines, I think they hit a sweet spot with the M8 engines. I think because they still had enough credibility or value in the engine, being an air-cooled engine V-twin, right? Or whether it's air-cooled, air oil-cooled, air liquid-cooled, whatever, or air oil-cooled or air-cooled. They still had value in that. Still had that they didn't totally offend everybody from the past. They did some because of price, and some people were never going to like the M8. They only like the twin cam. They only like shovel heads. They only like Evos. They only, you know, whatever. The list goes on and on and on. But there's no doubt that they kind of kept with tradition, but modern. You know, built on modern. And I think that's what kept people coming to Harley Davidson, or kept them coming. But if you're looking about the future, then the future that we all thought was a Revolution Max engine, liquid cooled engine, and you kind of look into Harley Davidson and say, well, where is this Revolution Max engine in a kind of cruiser bike or in a touring type bike? I'm not saying it has to go into the Taurus, but that can do that kind of function. Where is it? Well, the only bike from a touring capability, that has touring capability, is the Pan America. The Pan America you use off-road adventure bike or as a tourer. It's a great bike, right? But, you know, as a tourer style, whereas other motorcycle manufacturers are producing, you know, 1200 cc bikes, liquid cooled bikes that are kind of retro styling, but do have, you know, a fairing, do have bags on there as well. You know, like the Honda CMX 1100T, you know, that kind of thing. But, you know, it doesn't have to have a retro styling. There's lots of bikes that are sold that way. So the question is, can they modernize still? Can they still build bikes that people really want to ride in that kind of that raw sense that people like for Harley Davidsons, you know, the sound and everything? Or, you know, can they produce something that is going to just ride and ride and ride, and still has a little nod to the past, but most of it is modern? And here's the thing, and this is what there's been lots of articles so this week, and I've written a few as well, about Harley Davidson in terms of finances and the strength or weakness of the Livewire company, Livewire project. And essentially it comes down to this. You're trying to, and this is very similar to this small bike syndrome, this small bike issue. You're trying to sell a new concept into a fan base of a product that the only reason well, not the only reason, but one of the big reasons that they like that product is for the vibration, the rumble, the sound and everything. It's when you're on that bike, when you're riding it down the road. It's that kind of, you're still connected to something that is a big nod to for the years gone by. Many people criticize Harley Davidsons or Indians and places like, especially Harley Davidsons, for having that kind of old way of doing things. However, it's that is still, you know, keeps you connected. Lots of modern bikes have kind of lost that a little bit. Sometimes you get crazy power, crazy speeds, you know, over 200 miles an hour on these sports bikes, that kind of thing. You know, they're some of them are very easy to ride, and they're so easy to ride you can get yourself in lots of problems very, very quickly. However, with the likes of Harley Davidson, no, you still have to ride it. You still have to, you know, be in tune with it, and you know, it's not about speed, it's about that sound. So that's why the things like Livewire, there's no sound, there's no feeling, there's no emotion. Yes, there's a price issue, but it's that disconnect between what people want and what people go to Harley Davidson for. And especially now that the CEO Jochen Seitz has pledged, over, he said, no, we are going 100% electric. We will be there, yes, in years to come. This is why they're backing up, they're supporting the Livewire business that almost collapsed, you know, soon after it was launched on the stock exchange, United States. That they said no, because we want to invest in this. You know, Livewire, they're supposed to start selling or producing or releasing their second bike by now. It already had some pre-orders, and now dramatically they've had to push that back towards the end of the year or later on this year, and they've lost loads of their orders based upon it. They've only sold about 500 Livewires last year or something ridiculous. They're losing money hand over fist, and the reason is that you've got a bike that you want to introduce into the Harley Davidson world, or a small CC bike into the Harley Davidson world, and there just isn't the appetite in there for it. Dutch, with emissions, they won't have a choice. Yeah, very true. That is true. Water cool will only be the way that'll be allowed to go until only electric will be allowed. Well, no, not necessarily only electric. You know, okay, if you watch my channel, I talked about alternative fuels, talked about you know, synthetic fuels as well. Many of the not many, okay, let me rephrase that. Two of the motorcycle manufacturers of the last month, Triumph and KTM, have come out publicly and said that EV is not the only answer. Biofuels, synthetic fuels, that's where we could see the survival of the internal combustion engine. Yes, for sure, the landscape is going to change. Yes, it could be that only liquid cooled engines are going to be the bikes of the future. But you know, it could, but engines are modified and changed to meet emissions. So it really depends how far down the line we go with the emissions, you know, the emissions standards, let's say. But that would be for not only Harley Davidson, that would be for lots of other manufacturers as well, who are producing liquid air-cooled engines. So if you've got liquid-cooled variants, now there's nothing to say that Harley Davidson can't produce an M8 engine per se with a liquid-cooled version of an M8 engine. Okay, now this has been talked about quite a while in the last few years. And so, well, actually, in some of those touring bikes, you can actually quite easily modify those engines to be liquid cooled as well. You could have air cooled styling in terms of the fins, but essentially they're liquid cooled And we're not far off that right now with the oil-cooled and the oil air-cooled bikes anyway. So there's a kind of a movement there. And I believe BMW recently announced that they're going to have a liquid cool version of their Boxer engine as well. They're going to convert those, or the modern versions will be liquid cool versions, still exactly the same, horizontally opposed, you know, cylinders are still going to be, but essentially they're going to have fluid channels going around them, machined out in the new ones. So you're going to have liquid cooling. Well, essentially that's what liquid cooling is. It just goes around the cylinders. It just, you know, cools down the engine. So you're going to still have air cooling, of course. You're still going to have oil cooling, but you're going to have liquid cooling as well. So there's no reason why Harley Davidson can't do that as well to retain the nostalgia. And if that can meet emission standards as well, you know, but there we go. But I take the point completely that if you've got this Revolution, and this is, I suppose, been my argument, if you've got the Revolution Max engine from Harley Davidson, then why not exploit it? Why not produce more bikes? Why not give the masses? I'm certainly not saying get rid of the M8 engine, but what I'm saying is why not push, you know, more models with it? I'm so surprised that they haven't introduced a tourer so far. I'm so surprised that they haven't produced a proper cruiser with a Revolution Max engine. Really surprised. And perhaps they feel that the market just isn't there. But you don't know until you actually suggest it, bring it out, talk about it. And the thing is that people have been talking about this, not just me. I don't want to blow my own trumpet and say, hey, I'm the only one talking about it. No, I've heard other people talking about this for 2 or 3 years now. You know, since the Revolution Max engine was there. And I think they had a prototype. I seem to recall they had a prototype of a tourer, of a Revolution Max with in a touring frame, of some description, with a fairing and all that sort of stuff. There was a prototype. Now I could be completely wrong there, but I seem to recall from, you know, a couple of years ago there was something that they were touring, you know. But you know, who goes? Dutch Revolution Max would suck in a big tourer. Not the right motor for that. Why would you say that? Why would you say that? Okay, because what you're thinking about is a Revolution Max engine in the tourer itself, the current Tourers, but it'd have to be a different bike. It'd have to be a different chassis. It would have to be a different styling. You know, other brands have big Tourers, and they got liquid cooled engines in there. Yeah, why not? If I'm not mistaken, HC has stated that all their products will be EV at some point in the future. Yep, yeah. Ford says their cars will be half EV and half conventional by 2030. Well, obviously, there's a global thing by 2035 that no gasoline diesel cars are going to be sold, vehicles are going to be sold. They're here in Europe, but I think in California and other parts of the world as well. There may still be pushback on that. You know, because there's this big drive for EV all the way, but I think there's going to be pushback as technology evolves with synthetic fuels and biofuels and things like that. But the question is, will, you know, I don't see this being a big issue for Harley Davidson in terms of EV electric vehicles for a number of years yet. You know, it's certainly not going to affect my riding lifetime, as it were. I don't see it. I mean, the thing is, you know, would I buy an electric bike? Possibly, but I'd buy a very small bike. I've talked about this before. You know, something like you know, I'm a big fan of the company here in the UK, Maving. You know, a very small powered bike, retro styling. Really like it. It's only about 5 or 6 grand. Yeah, I quite like, you know. If I was in the mood for an electric bike, a small, short distance, a little electric bike. But, you know, a company like Harley Davidson, well, obviously, you know, just like any company, they've got to move with the times. They've got to move with the times. They've got to think of the future. They've got to think of what their market's going to be. Who knows what the markets are going to be? Who knows what the future rider will want? You know. Dave's Classic Class. I'll ride my 2021 Street Glide Special. Very nice. I do like a Street Glide Special until they ban gasoline. Well, yeah, look, the thing is, you know, you're going to ride it, you know, even though there's going to be and in Europe and the UK, they've sort of, including motorcycles now in this kind of 2030 or 2035 sort of roundup of bikes. But yeah, you're going to buy vehicles and you're just going to run it, aren't you, on gasoline. And, you know, especially if they're going to make cheap synthetic fuels or biofuels, and your motorcycle will be able to handle it, or you can make some modification and put some additive in there or something, I don't know, whatever, to make it usable, then you're going to do that instead of having an EV bike that maybe still may or may not be, you know, practical. Where did Harley Davidson go? Where did Indian go? Where did Triumph go? Whatever. I mean, it's you know, this is a question that you could just, you know, push around the houses for hours and hours, or days, weeks. You know, I mean, who knows? Where they will go depend on where the market is going as well, and also the world as well. What the world is doing. You know, the economy. We don't know. Crikey, the way the world's going in terms of wars and everything like that. We don't know. We might not even be here next year. Who knows? You know. But the biggest thing will be, and it's always been the case, it's whether companies like Harley Davidson can survive within any economic climate, and whether they can produce motorcycles that people will want to buy at a given price. And if the market falls away from them, if their buying market falls away from them, they're going to be hung and dry. So this is where I got quite excited by the notion of them finally producing small displacement engine bikes. Whether they're sold in Europe, whether they're sold in the United States, it doesn't really concern me. I think they're missing out a little bit, but I think it concerns me. But what it does, it allows them to produce small bikes and sell them in numbers that will prop up the company, so that they can continue to produce the big bikes like that we've all come to really like and admire and love riding. Now, the same could be said of Indian, right? The same could be said of BMW. Well, BMW have already done it. They entered with TVS of India. They produced the 300, GS 300 or 310 or whatever it is. KTM have already set up with Chinese motorcycle manufacturer CF Moto. They've also set up with Bajaj from Indian as well to produce there. They've just rolled out their 1 millionth motorcycle from an Indian motorcycle plant a couple of weeks ago. This is KTM, a millionth, right? You know, and Triumph are entering a relationship with Bajaj as well. They're going to be producing like a 300cc as well. So, you know, the other manufacturers are doing it. They're doing it. They can see what's on the wall. They can see that in order for us to stay afloat, stay in business, we have to get into this small bike market that we have been resistant to get into, that we haven't wanted to get into, because we're selling premium brands, premium bikes for premium riders and all this sort of stuff. Every motorcycle manufacturer does it. They all say it. They all say we've got a premium bike, right? You go to any dealership and the salesman's going to say, oh yeah, but our bikes are, you know, they're that much better, they're fantastic, they look at the quality on this. Well, of course it is. That's their job. You know, I'd be exactly the same. If somebody coming into my dealership, my showroom, and said, "Well, look at the quality of this, though. You know, it's amazing. It's amazing. You know, everybody's going to sell it, right? You're going to sell your product. There's nothing wrong with that, because you're just doing your job. But you know, but they've seen the writing on the wall. The writing on the wall is that the habits are changing, and people want different things, or younger generation want different things. You know, and I suppose this is why I always look at it. I always look at it from that point of view. I like a big bike, a big thumping bike. I like big ATV bikes. I like big, you know, Harley Davidsons. I'd love to get a Street Glide Special. You know, I think, or a Road King Special, or something like that. Road Glide, I'm not so sure. I don't think I would go that. You know, but those kinds of bikes, yeah, really like. You know, and nice Indian Pursuit. I really like that Indian Pursuit. I like the Indian FTR, which I'm going to ride next week. That kind of thing. You know, I like BMW's 1250 RTs, Triumph. Sorry, the Tourer. I like the R18s, especially the big R18B and the R18 Transcontinental. I like those bikes. I like the look of them. I like the visual, the aspect, you know, how they look as well. What else? You know, yeah, I like the BMW K1600B as well. I think it's a fantastic bike. You know, but I like many different bikes. But the ones that I really like are big bikes, right? But I also like really small bikes as well. But I don't necessarily feel that I would be wanting to go out there and buy those as my first bike, because I'm older, right? I'm older. I've been riding bikes, and I've gradually got bigger and bigger in my preferences, let's say. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't ride a smaller bike. If I was starting out again, yeah, I would be going for a smaller bike. There's no doubt. I'm not going to jump to a big bike straight away, am I? You know, so and it depends. Somebody made a comment in one of the videos the other day. It depends where you are in the world, because let's say in the United States there isn't, as far as I'm aware, there isn't a graded license. So basically, you get your license, motorcycle license, and you can ride any motorcycle. Whereas here in the UK and around Europe, I believe as well, you have graded licenses now. So you don't say, and it depends on your age as well. So you can, you know, you pass your test and you can only ride a bike up to a certain cc, and then you have to wait a few more years, and then you can go a little bit, you know, bigger, and or so on and so forth. Or if you're of a certain age, I can't remember if you have to be over 25 or something, then you can take a special course that will enable you to go straight into the big bikes as well. But it's about riding with maturity as well, whereas in other countries don't have that. You know, you just get on a big bike straight away. So in that sense, you know, having a small bike may not be suitable anyway. But the counter argument is always to this. The counter argument is this: well, if nobody's going to buy small bikes, let's say United States or Canada or whatever, why are small bikes selling? Why do people like, I don't know, Honda, I don't know, Royal Enfield, whomever, you know, why are they selling small bikes? Well, because people buy them. As simple as that. People buy them, you know. And I just think of these X350s from Harley Davidson as novelty bikes. And I think that, you know, people will buy into a branded novelty bike, and I think there's a lot of scope there for them. But there we go. That's what it is. So that's where I think, you know, in terms of Harley Davidson and Royal Enfield, they are playing on two different fields, as it were. Okay, to use a football analogy, they're two different fields of play, but they're getting very close to each other. They're getting very close to each other in terms of the way they're operating. And one is going to be directly impacting their turf, and the other one is kind of maybe impacting their turf, depending on how market forces go. You know, motorcycle companies are always in each other's faces in many ways. So it'd be very interesting to see how this goes for this year for Harley Davidson, for example, or any of the other companies. It'd be very interesting in my mind, you know, from a financial point of view, from an analytical point of view, to see how many bikes they will sell. I mean, I've got some figures here. Again, if you go to the website, you'll see I've written an article about this as well. But basically, does anybody know? I'll put it out to you there. For those of you just watching now, I don't know how many of you are watching still. Hopefully you're still there as well. But does anybody know how many M8 engined motorcycles have been sold since 2017? Anybody? Have a guess. How many Milwaukee 8 engined bikes, that's cruisers and tourers, how many have been sold since 2017? And I actually thought it was, I was surprised it was more than I thought it was. But when I compare it to other branded bikes, where they're kind of they're selling these a year, you know, or every, you know, couple of years, this 6 months, you know. So essentially, a total, and I do go into this in quite detail in the article which I've written on the website as well, revelataf.com. Go watch that as well. But the motorcycles that they've there's two figures, right? And it's a bit awkward when you dig into motorcycles that are sold by Harley Davidson. They use two big figures: motorcycles that are sold and motorcycles that are shipped. And basically the shipped ones, once they leave the factory, go to the dealerships. At the end of each year, there's always about a 15,000 discrepancy between the motorcycles that are shipped and the ones that are sold. They sold 15,000 bikes less. And the reason for that is that the manufacturer pushes out bikes towards the end of the year. One, it looks good that they've shipped more bikes, but also that provides a lot more inventory for the dealerships to hold over the winter months. Also, this caters for motorcycles that are carryover bikes for one model year to the next model year, and also it allows for bikes to be delivered early that are brand new model year bikes as well. So that's why there's this kind of surplus of bikes, if you know what I mean. But they are eventually sold, but it's just there's always this discrepancy. Anyway, so motorcycles shipped, not sold, but as I say, it's only going to be about 15,000 or so difference, right? Is 532,582. So just over 500,000, 500,000 bikes since 5 years? Since 2017, right? Now, so yeah, now the interesting thing was that, as we know, 2020, when the pandemic hit and the COVID hit, obviously sales were really affected. Harley Davidson and the Taurus were doing about 90-odd thousand and change for the previous 2 years, still well down on what they were selling years gone by, right? They went from 90-odd thousand sales of Taurus down to 56,000 in the Softails, would you believe, or the cruisers. They're around about the 59,000 for the 2 previous years. They only dropped to 55,000. So there's a dramatic change in the Taurus sales, but less so in the Softails. Now, could be that obviously the Taurus are a lot more expensive than the Softails, so it could be there's an economic thing. But it could be because people weren't venturing out and they didn't see the need to buy a big touring bike if they weren't going to go touring, especially for the American market, whereas they would buy a Softail or continue to buy Softails as well, you see. So maybe the touring bike market buyers moved to buying Softails and so on and so forth. But the interesting thing here is that what was it? Yeah, let's say 20, yeah, after 2020, 21, 22, the touring motorcycles, recovered back up to about 90,000, right? And the Softails, they kind of leveled off as about 50, 60,000, 55, 60,000. So it's almost like they've plateaued, whereas the Taurus bounced back a little bit as well. So I thought, but they're still down. They're down on sales from last year. They're down on sales from a few years ago. And then you wonder, well, how come they're doing so well then in terms of profitability? Why is their stock price doing so well? I've written another article about this as well, dissecting that. There's lots of information, not to do with Harley Davidson, this last 2 weeks actually, about big corporations around the globe who have been artificially inflating their own stock price. This is not Harley Davidson, by the way, it's got nothing to do with them. But it kind of makes you wonder, why is a stock price, which people quote all the time as, Harley Davidson are doing so well. Well, and it's funny, I saw an interview with Jochen Zeitz a few days ago. He was on some odd video interview, but he was basically admitting the stock price doesn't mean anything because it can go high and low. It doesn't reflect how well we're doing or not. And I thought that was quite interesting, that it doesn't really, whereas other people, will say, oh no, Harley Davidson doing great because their stock price has gone up, so and so and so forth. It doesn't mean anything. But what is interesting, that the number of unit sales that they're selling less bikes, and they have been selling less bikes for a number of years now. But they're also making money from financial things. And this is what they were saying about other companies, all the corporations around the world, that the stock price is kept high and the health of the company is high, not due to their primary business. it's due to other things that they're doing, like financial leverage and all this sort of stuff. And it just goes on and on. It's a bit of a minefield as how all this works. But essentially, it's almost like you've got a big. Let's say I own a business. Let's say I own a motorcycle repair shop, right? I own a motorcycle, and I do quite a few motorcycles, right? And I do servicing and tune-ups and fixing and all that sort of stuff. And I earn a bit of money, right? So what I do, I earn a bit of money, and I start investing in stocks and shares, and I'm pretty good at that. But then I also invest in lending people money, or I invest in houses or property, that kind of stuff. In other words, I'm earning money from other activities and not my business. However, it all goes on the same balance book, right? So then investors think that my business, my motorcycle repair business, is doing fantastically well, and it isn't. It's all this other stuff that's funding it. And this is what has been kind of levied, let's say, at the likes of not just Harley Davidson, but companies like that, to say, well, actually, your stock price is inflated high, but you don't really, you've done better than people thought coming out of COVID, you're still not doing great. When you look at the next year, the next 2 years of Harley Davidson, if this small CC thing doesn't work out for you, and the economy goes completely the other way, because not only is inflation an issue, but also, lending rates are going up, and this is affecting everybody in the United States, everybody in the world is affected by this. And people are not really buying brand new vehicles. They're not buying cars, they're not buying trucks, they're not buying everything in the numbers that they used to, right? Because people are holding on to their vehicles. Why? Because they can't afford it, or they don't want to afford it. They don't want to take that plunge when everything's a bit uncertain. So this is where you kind of start digging a bit deeper and say, well, actually, yes, it's great that a company like Harley Davidson or Indian or BMW or KTM or Triumph have been doing well this last year, because it's not just a Harley Davidson thing. This is other companies as well have done great. But how well can they continue to do so if they don't do something else? And that's the question. That's the question that I can't answer. I mean, that's the question that I don't think anybody can answer until we know what we know, until the year is, carried on, developed, and we'll see how we go. But there we go. Anyway, listen, guys, I've been rabbiting on for too long. I hope you got a little bit out of that. I hope you got some insight into what's going on in the motorcycling world as of today. But this kind of different motorcycle manufacturers taking market share off each other, I think this is going to be an interesting one, and only in terms of sales, in terms of unit sales. Not necessarily that one motorcycle manufacturer like Royal Enfield is in direct competition with Harley Davidson in terms of the bikes that they produce, but in terms of whether they can attract somebody's wallet, over the other company as well. That's where I think where we're at with that. But it'd be interesting to see. It'd be interesting to see what happens in the coming months and stuff like that. Right. Anyway, I think I need to go and have a little drinky pop. So put my feet up and enjoy the rest of the evening. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you have a lovely morning, evening, good night, whatever. I hope you're doing well. And I'll see you when I see you, whenever it is, on another live show coming very, very soon. Check out the website, revelatoralf.com. There's lots of blog posts there. Go check all those out. And they're coming out daily, sometimes 3 or 4, 5, 6 a day, sometimes 1 a day. It really depends on what stories are available, what other information I get. Some I'll talk about in expanded view in a live show, and some I'll talk about in just other videos or shorts or something like that. I am making a few more shorts right now, maybe taking more of a light-hearted look at a few things, not taking things too seriously there. But anyway, so we'll see how we go with that. But anyway, right, all I can say is it's been a lovely evening. What's that, an hour and a half, an hour and 40, talking about bikes, talking about stuff like that. And all I can say, it's wow, it's been emotional, and thanks very much, and I'll catch you again. Ta-da. Revelator app.